Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're actually going to cover a tool I made for Playmaker users to be able to use visual scripting to utilize Photon Engine's latest and greatest multiplayer service, Photon Fusion. Now, right out of the get-go, I want you to realize that Photon Fusion has a few different methods, ways you can use them. In fact, let's go take a look on Photon's website real quick. Let's go to their products. We'll go to Fusion. And if we scroll down, a lot of good stuff there. Let's go find out the chart right here. So here's the different ways you can use Photon Fusion. With Playmaker, the only way that you'll be able to use it with my tool is shared mode. And I tried talking to some of the folks at Photon about like, what's the benefit of host over shared? And I can't find one. In fact, their own chart makes it look like shared is superior because host depends on the latency of the host. So I even when I'm coding in C#, I'm still doing it with shared. The beauty of server is it helps to do like anti-cheat stuff, keep people on the up and up. With shared and even with host, they could potentially like time themselves out and cheat, but we're not worried about that. Let's take a look at how you can utilize the tool that I made. So when you install my Unity package with the tool, there is a demo scene. And let's just go ahead and hit play and see what happens. All right, it's a super simple scene. We click start. You can see I made these fire extinguishers. I made these out of just simple objects in Unity, and as well as this player character, this little puppy dog. It's just capsules. But there we go. So believe it or not, this is a multiplayer scene. This is already connected to Fusion. In fact, we can go look at our Don't Destroy and Load area, look at our Photon Fusion network runner, and here we can see the network runner. This is a Photon Fusion component, and we can see that it's running. We are in shared mode. Our simulation mode is client. We are the local player is 0, and you can just see this is legit. We have connected to Photon Fusion. So let me show you how we've done it with Playmaker. So there's 2 prefabs right now, which I'm tempted one day to break them up, but I don't know. Maybe I'll keep them on the same prefab. I could make them the same prefab just by taking this RPC handler and just putting it on this one as well. But I think I'll keep them separate. It's just easier to know where things are coming from. Technically, you could run the whole thing without the RPC handler, but you just wouldn't be able to send RPCs. The main bit that you have to have, if you've used Pun2 Playmaker integration in the past, there's a Playmaker Photon proxy that you had in the scene. That's basically what these 2 things are doing. So this first one, this network runner, it's not really the network runner, but it creates your network runner. And this is going to manage most of it. But then you can see here, there's an FSM that handles the global events. If you've ever used Pun2 and you've taken a look at the Playmaker Photon proxy, it's also got an FSM on it that's literally, there's nothing in it. It's just there to manage all the Photon events. And I don't think I have them all set up. I think technically there's still some other events like the on, I have on input there. Oh no, maybe I do have all the events there. But there's a lot that you wouldn't, if you run into some events that are missing, I'll add them. I'm constantly gonna be adding stuff to this based on y'all's feedback. In fact, if you read my description, I didn't want to pull it up yet because it was on a different website. This is gonna be published in multiple places. But like let's just real quick pull up the action browser. And if I close this, and I find Fusion, like we have, like if we just want to send an RPC, if I just search RPC, we have a bool RPC, we have one where you target the player, we have color RPCs, float RPCs, int RPCs, a multi-type RPC, which if you're curious what that is, oh, I can't put it on the prefab. Let's just create an empty, call it test, right click, add an FSM to it. All right. So like this multi-type RPC, this actually will let you send multiple pieces of information in a single RPC. So if you've used Pun2 integration in the past, sending multiple pieces of data, what you had to do is you had to put them all into a string and then separate them later. With this, you don't have to do that. With this, you can do, I think, it's been a while since I set this up because we're waiting for approval. You can just do event properties data. It's just one of Playmakers. So get event data. No, get event. I swear it's properties. Properties. Why can't I find it now? Okay, I think I found it. I actually go browse the category state machine. I think it's get event info. Yeah. So any of the info that you sent with your RPC, you can pull it in with this single action when you receive the RPC. But maybe you don't want all of these, or maybe you want to send, say, Philip, I wish I had an action where I could send 2 vector 3s in a single RPC. Hit me up in Discord. I'll make one, add it to the project, push it up. I just didn't want to add a gazillion different actions, because then this thing would never get released. So I just did the bare bones that you would need to get going. But we can make your life even easier. Just ask me and say, hey, Philip, is it possible? It would make my life so much easier if we can get an action that does this. Ask me, I'll add it to the project, and we will be good to go. All right, so let's take a look at how this works. So the first thing you need to do with multiplayer is you need a way to connect to the server. So you need to make sure that you go to Photon, go to create an account, go to your dashboard, because we need to get an API key. Also, it's worth noting, Photon Voice works with Fusion, but Photon Chat does not. So if you want to do a chat in your Fusion game, you would just do it with networked strings. I mean, it's super easy. All right, so we would want to create a new app, multiplayer game, and then make sure you choose Fusion, okay? And then my demo Fusion app. And let's see if I have enough. Yeah, I have too many applications. All right, but we can go look at a different one. Documentation, dashboard. Come on now. All right, so do I have an app ID? Oh, no, I don't want to show that one. This one I'm going to delete anyway, so here we go. I would just copy that app ID, and then I would come in here to the Fusion menu, go to Fusion Hub, and really, as soon as you install Photon Fusion, which the SDK, you don't get it. If you search Fusion on the App Store, all you're going to get is samples. If you want the latest SDK from Fusion, you need to go to the SDKs on the website. And there's not a Unity button, so it's a bit kind of weird to find where it is. But you're going to click Fusion SDK, and then this is what you want. Oh, wow. New version. I swear I was just on this. I swear I was on this after the 15th, and there was not a 15th. But now we got a new release. I'm going to check out these release notes real quick. All right, nothing incredibly new there. But as you can see, there's been a lot of iterations. So, yeah. One thing, too, if you really love Pun 2 and you're in maybe not the United States, not Europe, be mindful that the servers for Fusion are like a quarter of how many there are for Pun 2. I'll show you. All right, so here's the available regions. Like, oh, you know what? I think they might have added one, because I think when I was first working with Fusion, like January, actually I was working with it long before that, but when I was working on it in one of my big projects, I think there was only one US, but they got US for East and they got USW for US West. So there's not as many regions as there are for Pun, but I think they've added a couple here. So that's good. They're constantly growing the more Fusion gets used. So just keep that in mind. This is the current region list as of June 23rd, 2023. So if you're wanting to build a game that accesses a different region, you might need to, I think you could still host your own. I'm not sure how that works, but you might want to stick with Pun for a while, or maybe Bolt. It's so funny. I don't think anyone's used Bolt. Like, people go from Pun and then they finally make the leap to Fusion. I don't know if anyone that's ever used Bolt. All right, but let's get back to the project, which is over here. And so we go to Fusion Setup. You put in your ID, press Enter. It'll green light you when all's good. It's a good idea to go to, is this the one? Not really. App Settings. So if you've used Pun 2 integration, you're familiar with this. This is where you're going to put your app IDs. While you're in testing, you might want to just put a fixed region so that you know that the editor and your builds are connecting to the same region. Because I've had issues in the past where Unity Editor and Fusion and, well, at least PUD 2 would get confused, and for some reason sometimes Unity would connect to Europe and then my builds would connect to US East. But that was with PUN 2, connect to best cloud region. I don't think we have that option in Fusion to choose connect to best cloud. I could be wrong though. But anywho, let's actually see how we set this up. So I have a game object called Fusion Logic. Keep in mind, you want your network runner in the scene, you want your Playmaker Fusion RPC handler in the scene, and you can get those from the Fusion Playmaker Integration folder. Go to prefabs, and those are the only 2 prefabs that are in there. All right, and so we're going to create an FSM of Fusion Logic, and really you could probably just copy this from my demo scene, and it'll get you a jump start on your game. But right here, all we're doing is we are waiting for a player to click start. So if I go ahead and hit play, all right, so we have user interface to click start. I'll do another video later on how you can set up like rooms and whatnot, but this is just going to be the general connection. In a lot of games you're doing on your own anyways, you're probably not getting thousands of players. You're probably getting, if you're lucky, hundreds of players. And even then, you're probably not even getting that many playing at the same time. So having rooms is just kind of redundant, and it's kind of slowing down players from actually getting in and playing. So a lot of times, all you need is just a start button. It's like, I want to start playing, go ahead and throw them into a room. And that's basically what this is doing here. So when I click start, what it's going to do is it's going to use this Fusion Start Game action. And in Fusion, they don't call rooms rooms. In Fusions, they call rooms sessions. And you can't leave rooms. If you want to leave a room, you have to actually completely disconnect, destroy your network runner, recreate a network runner, and then start a new session. It's a bit frustrating, but it's there. This is visible box. So like if you wanted to start a private room, you would make that false. Or if the room fills up, whoever joins the room and they're the last player, based on whatever logic you set up, make the room no longer visible, and then it won't show up on room lists anymore. So then once we click start, it's trying to connect our, it's going to use this, it's going to create a network runner over here on the network runner prefab. And then once we've done that, this event will be called that we've joined. And then once we've joined, we're going to spawn our network object. Now, if you're new to multiplayer, and shout out to Drennan, if you ever see this, thank you for tossing this perspective out to me many months ago. It just makes things so much easier. In the past, when I first started multiplayer, my player would look like this, right? I would have my character controller, my avatar, I might even have a camera on it. But with multiplayer, what you then have to do is when your player spawns in, you need to check if it's yours and then enable all the things you need. Because especially in a virtual reality game, if you have a bunch of players join in with active cameras, it's just going to jack everything up. So if you can do it, the best thing for you to do is in your scene, already have your player object. And notice there's nothing visual to see there. Sorry, I had to pause for a minute because I was talking to my kids for a little bit. So we have this empty player object. My camera is probably already looking at it. Yeah, it's smooth following my player. And so what's going to happen is none of this is getting network synced. You can set up your player how you would normally set up your player if you have it start in your scene. Because the other users don't need to see your logic, right? It's all invisible stuff. All they need to see is how your player is interacting. So that is what actually gets spawned in. So if we look at our Fusion logic, what I'm spawning in is an avatar, and then it's going to be parented to my player object right here. So let's just go ahead and click start. Try it again. There we go. So now we're waiting on the player to join. Once it's fully connected, boom, we've joined. My avatar has spawned in. All right. And so now we've also enabled the FSM collect input because I just didn't want my invisible player moving around before the player was connected. All right, so now you can see the avatar is perfectly lined up with my player. So how are the other players seeing my avatar move with my player? If my player, the empty game object, doesn't have any networking on it. And the reason it is because the avatar has all the networking stuff on it. So the big piece is this network transform. this network transform, what's so nice about it is Photon takes care of syncing the position and rotation of a game object across the network. So all I had to do was then take that, what I want the players to see, put it on my normal player object, and because it's a child of it, with my normal player object moving around not networked, that world position of the avatar is still getting synced over the network. So in this method, make sure your interpolation space is set for world, because if you set it for local, it's just going to be 0, 0, 0 all the time, and nothing's going to be sent across the network. All right, so the network transform. Any object that gets spawned on the network also needs a network object component on it. So I'll show you here in a second and how we would create that. But let's just take a look at what logic we actually have on this avatar. We just have the single FSM. All right, so the first thing we do when you have networked objects is, now some of the logic's not going to start like this, because some of the logic is going to be like, when the FSM starts, it's going to be, hey, go find what this player's avatar is supposed to look like, or go find this player's name so you can display it above the head of this person. But if you have stuff like getting the direction, like we want our avatar to look in the direction of our movement. So I think that's what we're doing here. So anything time you're dealing with your own input, with the local player's input, and it's a game object that's getting spawned into the scene, and all the other players can technically see this FSM, you want to make sure your very first state you do is make sure it's mine. Now with the Pun 2 integration, there was an action called get is mine. With Fusion, it's called has state authority. If it has state authority, that means it's yours. So you can even see here on the has authority event, I put it is mine, because that's what I'm used to from back in the Pun days. And so because this is mine, I'm learning who my parent is. I know the player object is. I can also get the main camera. Why do I do that? Oh, because then I'm getting the move vector. And if the magnitude of the move vector is greater than 0, then I'm going to actually look at the move vector. And the reason I get the magnitude first is if I didn't do that, and I just went straight to the look at, if I was looking left and then I stopped, my avatar would automatically turn and face 0, 0, 0. So if you don't want it to be snapping, looking at the same direction each time, have it check the magnitude first, and then if the magnitude is greater than 0, do your look at, and if it's not, don't. Also, you might find smooth look at better for you, but I just use snap. You can tell it's pretty snappy because I'm using look at direction, not smooth look at. You can use smooth look at and like crank it up as high as you want. And then even though it's still pretty instant, it makes it look less jerky. And I mean, that's pretty much it. This is now visible over the network. This is the bare bones. If you had just a super social game where you just wanted the player avatars to see each other, there you go. You have it. Job done. Very little logic you have to create. Let's show how you would create a spawnable object from scratch. So if I wanted to create a little cube here, all right, if I know that I want this to be spawnable, I need to add a network object component to it. And by default, destroy when state authority leaves isn't checked. But if this is going to be owned by my player, if I want it to be destroyed if my player disconnects, I want to make sure that I check that. And let's say you don't want anybody ever to take ownership of it, then uncheck that. So nobody else can ever take ownership of that. Notice I don't have any baked data yet. Now this is what's really important. Notice it says this object hasn't been baked yet. Sometimes it can have issues baking. Generally, all you have to do is save the scene. And now we're baked. We got baked info. Or you just have to make it into a prefab. So like if I went, let me use a different prefabs folder. If I went and now drop that in here, that would also bake it. But maybe you duplicated it. Maybe you had cube 2. Doing that, it might think that it has baked information, but I don't think it will. In fact, I might even tell us that if I hit play now. All right, well, it didn't get mad, but if you ever see an error that says this prefab doesn't have baked data or something like that, all you need to do is go up here to the Fusion Manager and tell it to rebuild the prefab table. And if you go to, I think it's network project, no, is it in here? You can actually see the, here's all the prefabs. So you have cube and cube 1. So if you don't see one of your network objects in this prefab list, just go Fusion, rebuild prefab table. And so now if I wanted to, I could come up here to my Fusion logic and instead of spawning this player avatar, we can spawn this cube instead. So go hit play and let's hit start. And there's the cube and all the other players in the room would then see it visible. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop this video here. I hope you go out and if you've been scared of multiplayer, don't be scared because now you can do it with Playmaker. And let me know in the comments. I'm going to do a few more tutorials on using Photon Fusion with Playmaker. So let me know in the comments what you want to know specifically. A sneak peek, we can add network synced variables. So like, let's say my cube, let's say I wanted a bunch of different network sync stuff. We can network sync everything. I think almost everything in this list can now be network synced. Some of them are easier to do than others. It's not as straightforward as just checking this network sync box. You have to add one more component over here in the inspector. You need to, like, I think drag your FSM into it. I can't remember. But some of them can't be, what is it, material? Yeah, like a material. I think that's something that can be network synced. But Playmaker set up this network sync pool. And because they didn't have it to where materials could be network synced, you can't check this box. So what you have to do with those that can be synced, but there's no checkbox that'll let you sync, I think we have to, I'll have to check my own instructions, but I think we just have to call it networked. And then whatever you want the name to be, as long as the word networked is in there, I think it'll work. But we'll check that out in a future tutorial. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.